Today we're going to talk about polynomials and understanding the basic parts of a polynomial. We're going to see polynomials in everything we do this year. In order to talk about polynomials, we first have to go back over what we did in our last section. What is a term? Remember, a term is a number, a variable, or the product and quotient of numbers and variables. For example, 5, that's a number, but it's also a term. B, there's a variable, it's a term. 2x squared, right there, that's a product of numbers and variables. And then you could have m divided by 7, that's your quotient. So if you look at this happens to have 3 terms. How do I know there's 3? Well, if you look, this plus sign separates the first 2 terms, and this minus sign separates the last 2, creating 3 terms. Okay, looking at this one, there are 2 terms because we have a minus sign in between. So what you need to write down and realize is terms are separated by a plus or a minus sign. That's how we're going to pick out what our terms are in what we're going to be doing. Okay, so now that leads us to polynomial. Well, what is a polynomial? Plain and simple, it's an algebraic expression with many terms. Poly means many. Nomial means part. And in our case, those parts we call terms. Okay, so if we take a look, you have 3x. That's a polynomial. It just has 1 term. Here's a polynomial. This one happens to have 4 terms. This polynomial has 2 terms. And again, this one has 3. Okay, so now that we've gotten down what is a polynomial and that it can have different number of terms, we have special types of polynomials. So we classify the type based off the number of terms. One term we call a monomial. Mono means 1. A polynomial with 2 terms we call a binomial, because bi means 2. Then a polynomial with 3 terms we call a trinomial, because tri means 3. Then anything that has 4 or more. So if it's 4, 5, 6, 7, however many terms, 4 or more is just a polynomial. Now, this is a monomial. Okay, but a monomial is a special type of polynomial. This is a binomial. Again, a specific type of polynomial. Then I have a trinomial. And last, this is a polynomial because there are 4 terms. So make sure that you have an example of each one written down in your notes. Feel free to pause to get all 4 of these written down and what their names are, because that's going to come up on the next problem. Okay, so now we're going to classify or name. So your instructions might say both of these. You might see the instruction that says name the polynomial. And when we name it, we're going to name it by the number of terms. Okay? Okay, if I look at this, there's no plus or minus sign. Therefore, there's only 1 term here. Yes, there's different variables, but they're being multiplied. So remember, it said a product of numbers and variables. That's a term. So since there's only 1, it's a monomial. Well, if I look here, there is a plus and minus sign in there. So now I have to count each space, each term. So here's 1, 2, 3. Remember, our special polynomial with 3 terms is a trinomial. If I look here, I see a minus sign. So that means it's separating terms. So here's 1, here's 2. Therefore, it is a binomial. Now, there are a lot of plus and minus signs here. So what I like to do is underline each term that is being separated. So right now I have 3, 4, 5. Remember, anything that is 4 or more is simply a polynomial. So if I look here, I have 1, 2, 3, and 4. Again, this is a polynomial. So my last two, the one in purple and the one in white, while they have a different number of terms, they're still both polynomials. All of these on this page are polynomials, okay? But a monomial, a binomial, and a trinomial have special names. Now we're going to get into what's called the degree of a polynomial. So there's a different way that we classify these. So if we look at our table, something with a degree of 0 is called a constant. That goes back to topic 1. A constant was just a number. A polynomial that has a degree of 1 is linear. We're going to get into a whole unit on linear. Polynomial with a degree of 2 is a quadratic. Again, there's a whole section on quadratic. And as we go up, a polynomial with a degree of 3 is cubic. Then a polynomial with a degree of 4 is quartic. Once we hit 5, once we hit a polynomial with a degree of 5 or more, we just say it's a 5th degree or 6th degree. Well, how do I find that degree? We'll take a look at the definition. It's when you find the term and it has the greatest exponent of the variable. So when we're talking about a degree, we have to go through and look at the exponents, and it's the exponent of the variable. That's why a constant is 0, because just a number, there is no variable. But this is very important to jot down, so if you need to pause, you can. If a term has 2 or more variables, its degree is the sum of the exponents. That might sound like a lot, but we're going to go and we're going to do that. So just bear with me. Pause at any time if you need to write things down because it's moving too fast. Okay, so this is how I find the degree of a polynomial. My first step is to find the degree of each term. Okay, so let's go look. Here, the x squared. Remember, we're looking at the exponent of the variable. Well, that's 2. If I look at the x, its exponent is 1. Then I look at the 4, and its exponent is 0 because there is no variable. Okay, and we're going to get into that in topic 5 about 0 degrees and everything, and it'll make a little more sense. So now we're talking about the degree of that whole polynomial. Remember, it's the greatest degree. So if you look at this one, 2 is the biggest number. So the degree of that trinomial is 2. Getting the hang of it? Okay, let's go look over at the next one. We look at this term. There are now 2 variables. My x, don't forget, okay, it has a 1 on it. So we have to add 1 and 3. So the degree of that term is really 4. If I look at my next one, its degree is 3. Then I have a degree of 2. And again, I have a degree of 0. So the largest degree here is 4. So the degree of this polynomial is 4. So if I were to give it a specific name, my polynomial with the degree of 2, that's a quadratic. Then I come over to this other polynomial with the degree of 4, that's a quartic polynomial. Is it all coming together how those names come into play? Okay, so your turn. Pause now and try these on your own. It's really important that you're going to try them. We're going to go over them using a pencil so you can always go back. Okay, let's see how you did. So this first one's a monomial. There's only one term, but there's two variables. If you look, I have a 4 and I have a 9. So I'm going to have to add those. I hope you got 13. Okay, on our next one, there's a trinomial. This has a degree of 4. We have a degree of 2. And then look, we have a degree of 5. So they're not going in numerical order yet. We're going to get to that in a minute. But the one with the greatest degree would be, got it, 5. Okay? So let's go down to our last one. That's a trinomial. I have a degree of 6 and 2 within the same term. So right now, that one has a degree of 8. Okay? When I look here, oh, but wait, I don't see an exponent, but there's a 1. Then I have a 3, and then, oh, there's no exponent. But again, if there's a variable there and you don't see an exponent, it's 1. Just assume that. So when I add these 3 together, I get 5. This last one's pretty simple. There's only one variable with an exponent, and that is 7. But now you have 8, 5, and 7. So 8 is the degree of that trinomial. Okay? The last part of this is one of the most important parts. In math, we talk about standard form. Standard form is when you take all your terms and you order them by the largest degree down to the smallest degree. And you put the variables in alphabetical order. Well, why is standard form important? So think about it. If I were to write your name and I put the letters in the wrong order, it's still your name, it's just not spelled properly. But I know as a child, I hated it when someone spelled my name wrong. So think of standard form of a polynomial as writing it in its proper spelling. So let's go see what that looks like. So if I take a look here, I already know what the degrees of each of these are, okay? But I need to focus. This x has a degree of 1. This has a degree of 2. And this has a degree of 0. I need to now take the largest degree and reorder this polynomial. So x squared would come first, then x, then 4. That is now in standard form. Okay? So that one's kind of easy, kind of understandable. But let's look at this one. So if I take a look at the degree of my 5y, it's 1. We know that. The degree of this, it's a constant, so it's 0. This is cubic, so it's 3. Now this one, you got it, it's 4 because that x has a 1 on it and I got to add them. So be careful here. So I'm going to start with 3xy cubed. Then I'm going to go with my 2x cubed, my 5y. But when you write this 4, it needs to be minus 4 because in the original, it was minus 4. So when we're moving them around, you want to make sure that if the term moves, it moves with the sign in front of it. Okay, so now here's what I want you to do. Pause the video. Classify each one of these by the degree and the number of terms. So you're going to tell me if it's a cubic trinomial or a quartic binomial. Okay? So take a moment, answer these 6, and pause the video. Okay, let's see how you did. So number 1, we should have a constant monomial. There's only one, there's no variable. This is a linear monomial. This is a linear binomial because there's 2 terms. This is a quadratic trinomial. The highest exponent's 2, and there's 3 terms. Here is a cubic binomial. And last, we have a quartic polynomial. So this is all vocabulary and being able to recognize it. So you've got to know your vocab on this topic. Okay, this is it for this topic. So right now I want you to pause the video and I want you to write each polynomial in standard form. Remember, standard form is when we order them from the highest degree down. Okay, let's see. Here our degree is 1. Here we have 0. Here we have 4. So if you reordered this, you should have 2x to the 4th plus 3x plus 1. Let's come over to our other one. This one has a degree of 2, a degree of 0, a degree of 3, finally a degree of 1. Remember, when we reorder, the sign in front goes with the term behind. So this is, your polynomial is just going to start with a negative. Plus x squared plus 7x plus 64. How'd you do? Okay, remember, feel free to subscribe below or comment on the video if you didn't understand anything, because chances are there's someone else there that doesn't get it.